Professor Benz. I was a senior in high school and I had just gotten a summer job at a local daycare. It was actually the same daycare I went to as a young child. Now, I had had experience with young children, whether it be in my family or those babysitting odd jobs here and there, but never in a classroom setting. Being as this was only a summer job, I was basically there to just help out as needed, as I wasn't assigned to one specific classroom. Going into this job, I was very ready to learn as much as I could about childcare, as this is the field that I wanted to go into. But I would have never guessed in a million years that these children that I taught, they were very small, very adorable, but they taught me something that blew my mind to such an extent. I would have never guessed that these children changed the way I looked at childcare and children in general. It was my first week at the job and they had me helping out in an infant classroom. Being as that I didn't know any of these children and it was during mealtime, which is a very stressful time for any daycare provider if you have experience, I was there to help out, and just for a perspective, the infants in the classroom ranged from 6 weeks old to 18 months old. So these older infants who were able to sit up and feed themselves were seated at a table no higher than my knee, right about here. So I was trying to help out and I was actually feeding a younger infant who was in a high chair. I had my back turned to them, but out of the corner of my eye, I noticed one of these other infants who was seated at this table doing this hand movement. I didn't think much of it, and I continued to feed this baby. But he kept doing it, and he continued to get upset, very upset, when me and the other teacher in the classroom didn't react or respond to him. So I finally asked this teacher what he was doing, and she quickly explained to me that he was asking for more food, as she gave him more food, of course. I was 18 years old, and I didn't know this simple sign language term. Who would have guessed? This baby taught me something new. And this wasn't the only sign language I learned in that classroom. For example, rubbing your belly quite literally means just that they're hungry. Or when an infant is finished eating or finished doing an activity, they will do this, which indicates the caregiver that they're all done with an activity and they want to move on. What I learned in this classroom and at this job wasn't that these young infants were communicating in such a way before they actually spoke, but it introduced them to a life ahead of them filled with all types of communication, whether it be physically, like these hand gestures, or verbally, it's preparing them. Even though these young children were doing the sign language at a very young age, it doesn't ultimately make them speak any sooner, but it is creating a sense of intimacy between the adult and the child, and that they are communicating at a much earlier stage than when they speak, which is very helpful for me as a caregiver, because you want to create that sense of intimacy, and those bonds are very important as a daycare provider or caregiver. So whatever path you choose to follow, I want you to keep your eye open, even if it's just the corner of your eye, because you never know what you will witness and what it could teach you about whatever you want to do in your life, or maybe it will open your eye up to a whole new path with completely different interests or a new hobby even. Being aware of your surroundings is very important, so my advice to you is to just keep your eye open and be open to what you learn, and be aware of how it has an effect on your life and possibly your future, like it did for me.